creation shows us who God is. You want to know who God is? Look at what he's created. You want to know his power? Read the verses that he spoke light into existence. Think about how awesome that is. You know, I've tried to make a lot of things, and they normally, the first time, don't come out very well. I got a 3D printer, and it's a crazy piece of technology that you thread in these big old long rolls of plastic, and it does through this computer processing these things and these movements, and it lays down this hot plastic, and it creates this toy or this part. I don't even know how it does it. I could take apart an old truck. I'm not going to take apart a new truck. I know how it does it. But I still don't know how it does it like the designer knows how it does it. God's power is exhibited through his design for us. Not only is his power exhibited, but it displays his glory. We sing that song, have you ever stood at the ocean with the white foam at your feet? Felt the endless thundering motion. Have you ever, I know if you go down to the Gulf, you miss out a little bit. The water's great, the sand is great, but you don't get waves. Not like Southern California. Southern California, they don't put up red flag warnings because you shouldn't just go in the water if you don't know how to swim well. I remember we were down in Florida and they had the red flag warning, and I'm looking at the water and I'm going, I don't even see it because you can't. It's underneath. Like those riptides. But you could stand. I remember singing as a teenager out on the beach in Orange County and feeling the ground shake when those waves hit. Have you ever stood at the ocean? Or the song says, have you ever stood at the sunset with the sky mellowing red? Seen the clouds suspended like feathers? Have you ever sat in worship on Sunday morning and heard the singing of your brothers and sisters? Man, there are some ladies back over here that, man, this morning, real nice. Sounded great. And I'm sitting there just immersed in your sound. How can we hear and see and not profess the great power of God? Not only do we see his power and how it glorifies him, but we see his love. Whenever I start studying with somebody, I start studying with somebody in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. Crazy idea. And we work through creation, and most people know. They've read that section before. They've seen cartoons of it. They know that in some form or fashion, they've heard God created in 6 days what we have together as the earth. But a little bit ago, I showed you and I read a list of verses in Genesis chapter 1 that speaks about the idea when he created things, he said it was good. Whenever you do study, it's important to pick up on patterns of the text. And in Genesis chapter 1, the pattern is he creates, he says it was good. The signifying of the good is he goes to the next day. But something changes in the latter part of Genesis chapter 1. After he creates man, it changes in his terminology. He changes from it is good to, listen to me, it is very good. Something else happens in the pattern change. Not one other thing that God created, he created in his own image. Listen, I love dogs like the next person, but they are not my equal. Animals are not my equal. Animals were not created in God's image. You are. I am. And I love the language he uses as you get into chapter 1, starting in verse 26, as he starts talking about this concept of man. And look at what he says. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let us make man special. That shows us great love that God has for us. You may sometimes have a hard time seeing the significance of what it really means that God made you special. But if you ever sat across the table from a teenager that hates themselves, and you try to explain to them that God made you just the way you are and you are special, it means something different. Listen, God doesn't mess up. And each of us are different in our abilities, in our gifts, in our talents, in our quirks. We're all weird in our own way. We all have shortcomings and we all have victories. We all have things we're good at and we all have things we're bad at. Because when God made you, He didn't mess up. And I think this is really the first time you see the love of God shown to us in the Bible. When God made man. It was a special day for Him. And from that day forward, we see how God's redemptive plan over and over and over comes to fruition. Because on that day, God made man in His image.